"Ethan," I said, not much louder than a prayer, "pull over." He didn't ask why. He never does when my voice sounds like that, thin, low, already holding something it doesn't want to say. He just flicked on the blinker, guided the car onto the gravel shoulder, and slowed to a stop as the sun bled red across the horizon. The road ahead was empty, a straight stretch of asphalt that should have led us toward the weekend we'd been looking forward to for months. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something about to break. Ethan turned to me, his hands still on the wheel. "What's wrong, May?" I couldn't answer, not yet. My throat was tight, not from fear, but from the kind of certainty you can't explain without proof. The whisper. Before the storm, we were supposed to be halfway to the lake cabin by now. Our daughter Ellie had insisted we take a small trip. "You two deserve it," she'd said. "Get some air. I'll water the plants and feed the cat." But the words she said last night wouldn't leave my head. Her voice on the phone had been shaky, forced cheerful, and the way she said, "Don't worry about me, Mom, I'm fine. People only say that when they're not." Then there was the bag, that black duffel she had carried to her car last evening. I caught a glimpse of it as she shut the trunk, quick and nervous. She saw me looking, and for a split second, her eyes, my daughter's kind, open eyes, looked terrified. Now, hours later, that same feeling had crawled back under my skin. It wasn't just a hunch. It was something colder, older, a mother's instinct that doesn't need evidence. The Turnathan's voice brought me back. "May," he said softly, "you're pale. Talk to me." I shook my head. "Something's wrong with Ellie." He frowned, glancing toward the mirror, like expecting to see her there. "She texted us an hour ago," he said. "She's fine." "No," I whispered. "She's not. I can feel it." He hesitated, then nodded once, that quiet kind of agreement only years of marriage can shape. "Where to?" "Back home," I said. "Now." And without another word, he turned the wheel. The car swung slowly across the center line, tires crunching against the road, and the world tilted backward, as if time itself had changed its mind. We drove in silence. The only sound was the hum of the tires and the wind brushing the mirrors. Ethan didn't press for answers. He never did when I was in this kind of stillness, the unnamed fear. The sky deepened into a bruise-colored twilight as we crossed the bridge into town. My fingers twisted the hem of my sleeve until the fabric grew warm. When we passed the gas station near the diner, Ethan asked, "You think she's at home?" "I don't know," I said, "but I need to see her car." He gave a small nod. "All right." He pulled into our neighborhood. Every porch light was coming on, one by one, like little beacons that didn't quite reach far enough. Ellie's apartment was 3 blocks from ours, above a small bakery that smelled of sugar and burned edges after sundown. As we turned onto her street, I saw it immediately, her car, parked crooked, one rear light still faintly glowing. "Ethan," I said, breathless. "She's here." The choice. He stopped the car without hesitation. "Do you want to call her first?" he asked. I shook my head. "If something's wrong, I'll know the moment I see her." We stepped out. The air had that late autumn bite, cool enough to sting, quiet enough to hear the ticking of the car engine cooling beside the curb. Her trunk was closed. But the faint metallic smell hung in the air. Ethan noticed it too. His brow furrowed. "You smell that?" I nodded. He ran a finger along the edge of the trunk, then looked at me, not scared yet, just alert. "Do you want to check?" My throat felt dry. "No keys. She always keeps a spare," he said. "Under the right tail light." He was right. She always did. I reached under, my fingertips brushing cool metal. A small magnetic box clicked loose. Inside, the key. My hand trembled as I fitted into the lock. The lid lifted with a soft gasp of air, and there, inside the dim trunk light, was a sealed white cooler. The kind hospitals use, a hospital tag still clung to the handle, and beneath it, a smear of red. Ethan's hand found mine instantly, steady but shaking. He whispered, "May." "What did she do?" I couldn't answer. Not yet, because in that moment, staring at that cooler, that faint metallic smell twisting in the air. I knew this wasn't just about Ellie. It was about what she'd been hiding, and why she'd started looking at me like a stranger. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The red glow of the brake lights reflected off the back of Ellie's car, washing over our faces like a warning we hadn't yet earned. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small flashlight from his keychain, and clicked it on. The narrow beam caught the cooler again. The sterile white plastic, the sealed lid, the faint hospital tag dangling like a secret. "May," he said quietly, "we should close it up, go inside. Ask her." I shook my head. My gut told me we weren't ready for answers, not yet. The truth was sitting right in front of us, zipped and humming, and somehow that was worse than not knowing at all. Ethan kept the beam steady while I crouched closer. The metallic smell stung my nose. It was sharp, cold, and unmistakably medical. A faint sticker clung to the cooler. Cold storage, handle with care, property of St. Luke's Research. My stomach turned. "Ethan," I whispered. "That's a hospital label." He didn't move. His eyes tracked the lettering, the tag, the barcoded tape around the lid. "Research," he murmured. "Could be anything. Then why hide it in her trunk?" He didn't have an answer. I stood, gripping the edge of the open trunk. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from realization. Ellie worked part-time at a medical supply company last year. Deliveries, paperwork, shipments. She quit after 3 months, said it was boring. But 2 weeks ago, she mentioned an old coworker calling about a favor. That word replayed in my mind now. Favor. "Ethan," I said. Voice thin, "Lock the car." He hesitated. "May, please, just do it." He shut the trunk carefully, pressed the key fob until the locks clicked. Then he turned to me, jaw tight, shoulders stiff in the cool air. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that our daughter is in trouble, and we're standing at the edge of it." Ellie's door was still half open upstairs, light spilling onto the landing like a ribbon of safety that didn't feel safe anymore. She appeared at the top of the stairs before we even called out. "Mom, Dad?" Her voice cracked on the second word. "What are you doing back here?" "Your trunk," I said before Ethan could stop me. "You left it unlocked." For a fraction of a second, less than a breath, her expression changed. Not guilt, not shock. Something worse, resignation. She stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the air was too warm. The heater buzzed in the corner, and a faint hum, the same one we'd heard before, leaked from down the hallway. Ethan closed the door behind us. "Ellie," he said gently, "what's in the car?" She blinked hard. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." Her jaw tightened. "You looked?" "I smelled," I said softly. And that was enough. She sank onto the couch, elbows on her knees, head in her hands. "I told them I couldn't keep it. I told them it wasn't right." "Keep what?" Ethan asked, though his voice already held the answer. She looked up, eyes shining. "Samples. Medical samples. That's what they called them." Her voice cracked. "But they're not just samples. They're—" She stopped, pressing her palms together, as if trying to hold her words still. "They're stolen, Mom, from the hospital." "Someone's selling them." The room tilted. Ethan sat down across from her, steady but pale. "Who's someone, Ellie?" "I don't know," she said, wiping her face. "I only met one of them. The guy from the lab. He said they were going to be thrown away, that they could save lives if they were redirected. He made it sound noble." She gave a hollow laugh. "He even called it charity. And you believed him?" "I wanted to," she whispered. "Until he paid me." The heater hummed louder, like it wanted to drown us out. I walked to the window, trying to think, to breathe. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, shaking the glass. "How long?" I asked. Her voice came out small. "A few months?" "Ellie," Ethan said, leaning forward, "you realize this isn't small. This isn't just bending rules. This is felony-level illegal." She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "I know. I didn't want to think. I just needed to pay rent, Dad, and it started with one box, then another. They told me to store them, move them, just for a few days. But last week, they gave me that cooler. Said to keep it until tomorrow. What's in it? I don't know exactly, she said. They said it's blood plasma, experimental. From where? St. Luke's. The room fell silent. Ethan exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. May, call Ben. Ben, our old neighbor. Now a detective. The same man who'd helped us when the break-in happened years ago. The same one who told Ethan once, if anything ever feels wrong, don't wait. Just call. I hesitated. Ethan, if we call him, she's already involved, he said. We can't pretend this away. Ellie looked up, panic flooding her face. You're going to call the police on me? No, I said, walking back to her. We're going to call someone who can protect you before the people who used you decide they can't afford to let you talk. Her mouth opened, closed. I didn't know it was like that. It always is, Ethan said quietly. I took my phone from my purse. My hands shook as I scrolled to Ben's number. Before I pressed call, I looked at Ellie, my little girl, the same one who used to braid my hair while humming songs from the radio, who still bit her lip when nervous. This isn't punishment, I said gently. This is rescue. The phone rang once, twice. Detective Collins, came Ben's familiar voice. Ben, I said. It's May Ellison, he paused. May? Everything okay? I looked at Ethan, at Ellie. At the closed trunk I could still see through the window, its shadow stretching under the streetlight like a secret that couldn't stay hidden any longer. No, I said. It's not, and I need you to come right now. The clock on the wall said 8:47 p.m., but time had stopped meaning much. The air in Ellie's apartment had turned heavy, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the sky forgets how to breathe. Ethan sat beside her on the couch, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped so tightly the veins stood out like pale ropes. I paced near the window, phone still warm from my call to Ben. He said he'd be here in 20 minutes. That had been 35 minutes ago. Ellie hadn't spoken since. Every now and then she'd look toward the door, like she could still outrun what was coming. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. We're not angry, honey, he said quietly. We just need to understand. Her laugh was short, cracked. Understand? Dad, there's a police detective coming to my apartment. What exactly do you want to understand? Everything, I said, turning from the window. How it started. Who contacted you? What they asked for. All of it, she shook her head. You wouldn't believe me. Try me, I said. I've believed worse things and forgiven better lies. Her eyes flickered toward me, sharp and wet. You think this is about lying? You think I wanted this? I took a slow breath. No, I think someone saw a girl who needed help and decided to use her. Her face broke. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Mom. He said he was trying to help people. Who? Ethan asked. His name's Aaron, she whispered. He used to work at St. Luke's. Said the hospital was throwing away expired meds that could still be used. He made it sound like charity, like we were helping sick people who couldn't afford treatment. I closed my eyes. There it was, the hook that always gets them, the illusion of doing good. When did you realize it wasn't? She rubbed her palms over her jeans. The third drop-off. He started paying more. Told me not to tell anyone. Said the police didn't understand the bigger picture. That's when I started getting scared. Ethan looked at her, eyes tired but steady. And you didn't stop? I tried, she said. But they had my license, my address. They said if I didn't keep the cooler for them, they'd call it in, say I stole it. I panicked. The sound of a car pulling into the lot cut through the room. Tires on gravel. A door shutting, Ellie froze. Ethan stood up. I glanced out the window and saw a familiar figure stepping out of a dark sedan. Ben Collins. Gray jacket, badge chain around his neck, eyes scanning before he even reached the stairs. When I opened the door, Ben's face softened. May, Ethan. He gave a nod, then saw Ellie behind them. And this must be our reason for the urgent call. She's my daughter, I said. He smiled kindly, but his tone was all business. Let's sit down. Inside, the air shifted. Ellie folded her arms, shrinking back into the couch. Ben took a small notepad from his pocket, clicked a pen, and set it on his knee. Tell me what's going on, he said, voice calm but exact. Start with the facts. No guesses. No edits, Ethan leaned forward. We found a medical cooler in her trunk. with a hospital tag from St. Luke's. She says someone gave it to her to hold until tomorrow. Ben's jaw tightened. You didn't open it? No, Ethan said. We didn't touch anything. Ben nodded. Good, that helps. He turned to Ellie. You said someone gave it to you. What's his full name? I only know him as Aaron. Mid-30s, dark hair, glasses, always wore hospital scrubs. Said he worked in research, Ben wrote quickly. You have his number? She hesitated, then took her phone from the table and handed it to him. He told me to text him only on Signal. He deletes messages. Not from our end, Ben said, pocketing the phone carefully. We'll pull what we can. He stood and gestured to Ethan. I need to see the trunk. Ethan nodded. This way. I stayed behind with Ellie. She sat motionless, eyes on the floor. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. Finally, she whispered, You think I'm going to jail, don't you? I sat beside her. I think you did something wrong trying to do something right. And that's not the same thing as evil, Ellie. But it's still dangerous. Her lips quivered. I didn't know who else to tell. I thought, if I told you, you'd be disappointed. I reached out and touched her hand. Sweetheart, disappointment is when you forget to call. I gestured to the door, the cooler, the chaos outside. This is fear, and fear is something we fix together. She pressed her face into her hands and sobbed quietly. When Ethan and Ben came back, their faces told me everything. It's full, Ben said, closing his notebook. Plasma units and experimental medication. St. Luke's confirmed the batch numbers were stolen 2 days ago. Ellie looked up, horrified. So it's real? It's real, Ben said, and dangerous. Whoever gave this to you isn't playing Robin Hood. They're moving stolen medical inventory for money. And now you're the middle link. Ethan sank into a chair. What happens now? Ben sighed. Normally I'd seize the evidence, file a report, and let the DA handle it. But, he glanced at Ellie. She might be safer if she helps us first. Ellie blinked. Helps you how? By cooperating, he said simply. If she can lead us to Aaron, we can cut her a deal. Protection, maybe probation. But we'll need proof she's telling the truth. Her voice cracked. You mean a sting operation? Something like that, Ben said. A controlled meeting. We set it up, record everything, make sure you're safe. You hand over the cooler, we arrest him. Ethan looked at him sharply. Absolutely not. She's not bait. Ben met his gaze evenly. I won't put her in danger, Ethan. We'll have eyes on her the entire time. But she's the only one Aaron trusts right now. Without her, we have nothing but a stolen cooler and a scared young woman who could end up charged. The room went quiet. I looked at my daughter, her face pale, her hands trembling. Ellie, I said softly, what do you want to do? I want this over, she whispered. I want my life back. Then we help, I said. Ben outlined the operation. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m., at the old train yard where Ellie was supposed to deliver the cooler. She'd text Aaron that morning to confirm. Undercover officers would position themselves nearby. He promised protection, supervision, backup. Still, the plan felt like standing on a frozen lake, listening for cracks. When Ben left to file the paperwork, Ethan followed him out to the stairwell. I heard their low voices, Ethan's deep and angry, Ben's calm but firm. When Ethan returned, his face was tight. He says it's safe, he said. That they've done this 100 times. I touched his arm. Do you believe him? He hesitated. I believe he means it. Ellie sat motionless, clutching a tissue. Dad, she said finally, voice small. I'm sorry. Ethan looked at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he exhaled and sank down beside her. Ellie, he said quietly, when you were little, you used to sneak frogs into the house. You'd hide them in your coat pocket because you thought they were cold outside. You never stopped trying to save things. I just wish you'd learned sooner that saving people isn't about keeping secrets. It's about letting the light in. She broke then, really broke, sobbing into his shoulder like she was 5 again. He held her, his hand trembling in her hair. I stood at the window, watching the blue-red flash of Ben's car fade into the distance. The road outside was dark, stretching in 2 directions. One way led to the past, the choices already made. The other led to whatever waited tomorrow night. And somewhere between the two, we stood, 3 people bound by blood, fear, and the smallest flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could still make this right. After Ben left, the house felt too quiet. Ethan poured himself coffee he didn't drink. Ellie sat curled on the couch, wrapped in one of my old blankets. "I'll stay here tonight," I said. "You're not alone in this," she nodded weakly. "Mom, what if something goes wrong tomorrow?" "Then we'll fix it," I said simply. "The same way we fixed tonight. One right thing at a time." Ethan looked up from his untouched cup. "You trust Ben?" "I trust that we didn't turn back for nothing," I said. "Something told us to stop that car. We did. Now we finish what we started." The wind outside picked up, rattling the window. Ellie flinched at the sound. I sat beside her and took her hand. "Close your eyes," I said softly. "You'll need rest for tomorrow." She leaned against me, exhausted, and within minutes her breathing evened out. Ethan stood near the window, his reflection faint in the glass. Broad shoulders, lined face, eyes fixed on something far away. "What are you thinking?" I whispered. He didn't turn. "That she could have died, May. If we hadn't turned around." I finished for him. "We'd have never known until it was too late." He nodded slowly. "I can't stop seeing that cooler." "Then let's make sure it's the last one," I said. He crossed the room, brushed a kiss against my forehead and whispered, "You always know when to turn around." "Not always," I said, glancing at our sleeping daughter. "But when it matters." Dawn came pale and heavy. The apartment was still. The cooler sat by the door where Ben had left it, sealed, tagged, waiting like a test none of us wanted to take. Ellie woke early. She didn't speak, just sat with her coffee, staring at the sunrise through the blinds. "Text him," Ethan said quietly. Her fingers trembled as she typed. "Got it. See you at 7 a minute later," the reply came. "Perfect." "Don't be late." Ethan looked at me. "It's happening." I nodded, though my throat burned. This was it, the point of no return. The day our daughter's mistake would either destroy her or redeem her. And all I could think about was that moment on the highway, my voice breaking, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Ethan, pull over." That was the moment everything began to change. The day felt longer than any day I can remember. Morning sunlight came and went. Afternoon shadows stretched across the floor like clock hands that refused to move. Every hour between dawn and dusk was measured in shallow breaths, restless pacing, and the small, steady click of Ethan's pen as he made and remade the same list of what-ifs. Ellie stayed quiet through most of it. She hadn't touched breakfast, hadn't looked up from her phone except to confirm the meeting time with Ben, 7 p.m. Old Train Yard, the place where broken things went to be forgotten. By early evening, the apartment smelled of coffee gone cold and rain that hadn't yet fallen. Ethan checked his watch every few minutes, then checked the door. When Ben finally knocked, the sound split the tension like thunder. He came in wearing plain clothes, jeans, jacket, nothing that shouted detective, but everything about him was authority. Behind him, 2 other officers waited at the bottom of the stairs. "Evening," Ben said. "You ready, Ellie?" She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "As ready as I'll ever be." He gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Good. You won't be alone out there. We'll have eyes on every angle. You just do what we practiced. Calm, natural, keep the phone on, and step away once the handoff happens." She swallowed hard. "And if he brings someone with him?" Ben's expression hardened. "Then we move faster." He turned to Ethan and me. "I know this isn't easy, but you need to stay here." "You can't follow." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That's my daughter out there." "I know," Ben said gently. "And because she's your daughter, I need you to let us do our jobs. If she sees you, she'll panic. If Aaron sees you, he'll run." Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, the muscles in his jaw twitching, the old stubbornness flaring. But then he looked at Ellie, her small frame wrapped in one of my old coats, and nodded once. "Bring her home." "I will," Ben said. He handed her a small microphone pinned to her collar and an earpiece she barely knew how to wear. Then after a brief hug, she left. The door closed, and the silence left behind was unbearable. We sat by the window. From there, I could see the faint outline of the industrial district in the distance, the water tower, the rusted freight cars, the skeletal remains of the old storage warehouses. The radio on the table crackled softly, feeding us fragments of conversation from Ben's team. Static, movement, the coded rhythm of professionals doing something. Dangerous without calling it that. Unit 3 in position, subject vehicle, approaching, hold until visual, Ethan. Gripped the arm of the chair so tightly the wood creaked. I could hear his heartbeat. Or maybe it was mine. Then Ben's voice came through the static, calm but clipped. Ellie's on site. Visual confirmed. Subject approaching from North Lot. I closed my eyes. In the dark behind my eyelids, I could see her, standing there under the halogen light, clutching that cooler, her hair whipping in the wind, pretending to be someone who wasn't terrified. A minute passed. Then exchange initiated. Ethan's hand found mine. His palm was damp, subject reaching for the cooler. Stand by. There was a pause, then a burst of static, and Ben's voice changed. Sharper now. Go! Go! I flinched. Ethan shot to his feet. Unit 3 moving in. Hands where I can see them. Get him down! Get him down! I couldn't breathe. The sound of scuffling filtered through the static. Heavy boots on gravel. The muffled shout of a man caught too late to lie his way out. And then, silence, for what felt like forever. Finally, Ben's voice returned slower, softer. Suspect in custody. Cooler secured. Ellie's safe. I sagged back into the chair, tears spilling before I could stop them. Ethan covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking in quiet relief. We stayed that way, holding the silence like something fragile, until the knock came an hour later. Ellie stood in the doorway, pale but whole. Her hair was damp from rain, her cheeks streaked with the faint shimmer of tears she hadn't wiped away yet. Ben stood behind her, the faintest smile in his eyes. It's over, he said. You can breathe now. Ethan didn't hesitate. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. She broke instantly, sobbing, shaking, whispering apologies that tangled with his reassurances. I stood behind them, watching the scene like something holy. When Ben finally spoke, his tone was even. They got him with possession, distribution, and conspiracy. Enough evidence in the cooler alone to lock him up for a long time. Ellie's statement seals it. Ellie lifted her head. He didn't even fight. He just laughed. Said I was naive to think it mattered. Ben sighed. They always do. The only thing they hate more than losing money is losing control. He turned to me. There'll be questions tomorrow, a formal statement, some paperwork. But tonight she's free to go home. Home, I repeated softly. That's all that matters. He nodded once, gave Ellie a gentle pat on the shoulder, and left us to the quiet. We didn't sleep much that night. Ellie stayed on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the cooler now locked away in Ben's custody. The house felt lighter and heavier all at once, like a door had opened, but the air inside hadn't quite learned to move again. Sometime around 3 a.m., she spoke. Mom? Yes, sweetheart? Do you think I'll ever feel normal again? I thought about that, about what normal had ever meant. A quiet house, coffee in the morning, a daughter who texted love you without guilt attached. Normal, I said softly, is just the name we give to peace we forget we had. You'll get there. Slowly. She nodded, tears catching the streetlight through the window. Ethan, sitting at the table, spoke without looking up. What matters isn't what you did yesterday. It's what you do next. Ellie gave a small, sad smile. That sounds like something you'd tell one of your students. He finally looked at her. That's because I've had a lot of students who needed to hear it. Ben returned just after sunrise. He looked exhausted but satisfied. Good news, he said. Aaron talked. Talked? Ethan asked. He's naming names. The supplier, the transport chain, the people higher up. Your daughter just helped us take down a whole operation. Ellie froze. Really? Ben nodded. You did the right thing. And the law recognizes that. The DA's offering you immunity in exchange for cooperation. You'll have to testify, but you're free. Ethan exhaled slowly. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until that moment. Ben placed a small folder on the table. It's all in here. Just keep her quiet about the case until it's closed. He gave us a small, tired smile. You two did good. After he left, Ellie opened the folder, read a few lines, then closed it again. "What's wrong?" I asked. She stared at the closed cover. "It just feels strange. Doing the right thing and still feeling so guilty. That's what growing up feels like," Ethan said softly. Weeks passed. The headlines came and went. Former hospital employee arrested in stolen medical scandal. Ellie's name was never mentioned, per Ben's promise. But the experience left marks that didn't fade easily. Some nights, I'd find her standing by the window, staring out at the streetlights like they were a language she was still learning. One evening, she said quietly, "I don't think I'll ever trust myself again." "You will," I said, "because you stopped before it was too late. That's what trust is, not perfection, but turning around when your soul tells you to." She looked at me for a long time, then said, "Like you did on the highway." That line hit something deep in me, that moment, that instinct, the sudden words I hadn't even meant to say. "Ethan, pull over." It wasn't just a warning, it was a calling. 3 months later, we sat in the courthouse. Ellie testified quietly, clearly. Aaron avoided her eyes the entire time. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, she cried silently, not out of vengeance, but relief. Afterward, outside the courthouse, she turned to me and said, "It's over." "Mom?" "Almost," I said. "Now comes the living part." That night after dinner, Ethan poured 2 cups of tea and joined me on the porch. The sky was violet, the air soft with spring. "She's sleeping," he said. "First time in weeks," I smiled faintly. "She's earned it." He sipped his tea, thoughtful. "You know, I keep thinking about that day on the road." I looked at him. "I do too," he nodded slowly. "You said, 'Pull over,' and I didn't even question it. I just did it. I don't know why." "Yes, you do," I said softly. "You trusted me." He looked down at his cup. That trust saved her life. The porch light flickered as a moth brushed against it. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle blew, low, lonely, but moving forward. I leaned against his shoulder. "Do you think she'll be okay?" He nodded. "She's got your instincts," he said. "And your courage," I smiled. "And your stubbornness," he chuckled. "Maybe that's why she's still standing." We sat there in silence for a long time, listening to the night breathe. Finally, I said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't turned around?" Ethan's voice was steady. "No, because we did." Months later, the 3 of us finally took that lake trip. The same route, the same car, only this time, when the road stretched out ahead, it didn't feel like escape. It felt like redemption. Ellie sat in the back seat, sketchbook in her lap, humming softly to herself. Ethan drove, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near mine. I looked at the reflection of our daughter in the side mirror, calm, alive, and free. Sometimes miracles don't look like light from heaven. Sometimes they look like a husband turning a car around when his wife whispers now. Because that whisper, that instinct, isn't fear. It's love remembering what direction home is. Morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, warm and forgiving, the kind that makes even the dust motes look like something sacred. Ellie sat at the table with her coffee, tracing the rim of the mug with her finger. She wasn't crying anymore. Her eyes were tired, but clear, like the sky after a long storm finally gives up fighting the sun. Ethan poured himself a cup and joined us. No one spoke for a few minutes. There was peace in the quiet, the kind that didn't need words to explain what had already been survived. The weeks that followed felt like learning to walk again. Ellie started volunteering at a clinic downtown, the kind that helps families who can't afford medicine. It wasn't punishment, it was penance, her way of turning the wrong kind of knowledge into something right. Every evening, she'd come home exhausted but lighter. One night, I found her at the table sorting paperwork. "Mom," she said, "do you ever stop feeling guilty for what you almost lost?" I looked at her, this girl who had fallen hard but refused to stay down. "No," I said. "You don't stop feeling it, but you learn to carry it the right way. Guilt is heavy, but it keeps you honest." Ethan smiled faintly over his newspaper. "Your mom's been carrying my guilt for 40 years and still hasn't dropped it." Ellie laughed, the real kind, the kind that sounds like life starting over. 3 months later, we finally made it to the lake. Same cabin, same winding road, but everything was different. The air felt clearer. The car felt lighter. The world somehow was wider. Ellie packed her sketchbook, her pencils, and the small cross I used to wear when she was little. "For luck," she said. Handing it back to me, Ethan drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting near mine, the same way he always did when the road stretched long and the world seemed too quiet. Halfway there, we passed the spot where I'd said it. "Ethan, pull over." It looked ordinary now, a bend in the road, a stretch of gravel, wildflowers bending toward the ditch. But to me it was sacred ground, the place where instinct met mercy. Ethan slowed, pulled the car over, and glanced at me. "Want to stop?" I nodded. We stepped out. The wind carried the smell of pine and river, the kind of scent that feels like forgiveness. Ellie joined us, standing between us, her hands tucked in her pockets. "This is where it happened?" she asked. "This is where it started," I said, "and where it could have ended." She looked out at the road, the sunlight glinting off the asphalt. "You must have been terrified." "I was," I admitted. "But not because I was afraid of what we'd find. I was afraid of what we'd lose if we didn't turn back." Ethan slipped his arm around my shoulders. "Sometimes you have to stop the car to save the journey." That night, sitting on the cabin porch, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. The page stayed blank for a long time before the words finally came. Some choices don't look brave when you make them. They look inconvenient, emotional, foolish. But sometimes, courage sounds like a whisper in the middle of a highway, just 3 words that change everything. "Turn around now." I paused, listening to the frogs singing in the reeds. Behind me, Ellie and Ethan were laughing about burnt marshmallows. For the first time in months, I felt something that didn't hurt. Peace. When people ask me now what happened that night, I tell them it's not a story about crime. It's a story about listening. Listening to your gut when it's trying to save you. Listening to the silence between 2 people who have built a lifetime of trust. Listening to love when it says stop, even when everything else says go. We live in a world that tells us to keep moving, to stay busy, stay forward, stay fine. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pull over, turn around, and face what's chasing you before it catches up. That night on the highway wasn't fate. It was choice. And choice is where redemption begins. They say a mother's instinct is just emotion. I say it's a map, one drawn in quiet moments and sleepless nights, in worry lines and prayers whispered under breath. That night, when I told my husband to turn the car around, I didn't know what we'd find. I just knew love doesn't wait for proof. We didn't just save our daughter's life that day. We saved the part of ourselves that still believed in second chances, in family, in forgiveness, because sometimes justice isn't about punishment. It's about truth. And redemption isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering exactly where you stopped, turned around, and decided to start again. The lake shimmered gold as the sun slipped below the trees. Ethan reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. Ellie leaned her head on my shoulder, and the world, for once, felt exactly as it should. We turned the car around, and in doing so, we found our way home. Let us know in the comment, where are you watching from? Please subscribe to the channel, Her Side of the Story. Thanks for watching. Until here.